Oh, no, that's the doorbell. That's General Electric, too.
General Electric is one of the world's most admired brands. Their inventions reshaped domestic American life.
These initials came to be known as the initials of a friend.
In the early 1990s, GE tried to buy a small Chinese refrigerator company.
我们通知他说我们不想和你合作了，他是非常生气。他就说，进来之后我们第一个目标就要消灭你们。
20 years on, it was GE's own appliance unit that faced the axe.
They were no longer the face of General Electric. The relevant industries were finance, aerospace, not refrigerators.
There was always rumors for years about something might happen to the appliance division.
And RenDanHeYi made a bid to buy its old enemy.
就是只是以报价为唯一标准，那我们就没有希望。
It wasn't do or die, but it was now or never.
This is the inside story of how a small Chinese company that sold defective fridges came to buy over one of the oldest appliance companies in the world.
一开始也非常担心，美国公司、美国人会不会接受呢？
The free time we have today to enjoy outside the home owes a lot to one American company, General Electric. In 1892, the General Electric Company was co-founded by the same man who gave us the light bulb, Thomas Edison. By the turn of the century, General Electric manufactured almost everything needed to produce electricity across the United States. Equally, GE needed to invent things so people would buy electricity.
Our nation was stirring with new ideas, new wants, new needs. We were building a better way of life, and we had a powerful force to help us, electricity. Companies like General Electric were finding ways to use electricity, to light our homes, do our work. One of the new things that came along was General Electric's famous monitor-top refrigerator.
In the home, GE gave Americans their first electric iron, toaster, and electric range. But it was the monitor top, released in 1927, that was the game changer, the first affordable household refrigerator in America.
Good morning. Good morning. My dear, why didn't you wake me up? Oh, there's nothing to do, really.
You know, we talk about disruption as if it's a contemporary phenomenon. Refrigerators were one of the really basic, fundamental innovations at the beginning of the 20th century that changed American home life. One of the things that it did was it changed the cadence of life. So instead of going shopping every day and instead of going to markets, it was part of the mass consumption of the food industry. Agricultural products changed. You could shop infrequently. It gave whoever the buyer was, more often than not a woman, it gave that individual more time.
During the heady post-World War II years, American families didn't need much persuading to snap up modern appliances.
These initials came to be known as the initials of a friend.
In America, GE products could be found in almost every home. Kevin Nolan became GE Appliances CEO in 2017.
The first GE product I remember is in my grandmother's house, where she had a very old GE freezer. And I remember the different kind of handle and the iconic badge that product has. And then we also had a GE toaster oven, which we really enjoyed as growing up as a kid.
GE grew rapidly. By 1980, it was a corporate giant with 400,000 workers worldwide. But GE was also seen as a so-called GNP company. one which can never grow any faster than the economy. In 1981, GE appointed its youngest ever CEO, 40-year-old Jack Welch. He made an immediate impact.
You hate bureaucracy.
I hate it. Because what does a bureaucracy do? It forces people to look inward. People don't look at the customer in a bureaucracy. They come in and they worry about what? They worry about their boss, pleasing him or her, getting along, getting through, and getting out safe. It has all the wrong characteristics. It looks in, it doesn't look out. It rewards those who curry favor within it.
Welch ordered a radical restructure. He demanded that GE become #1 or 2 in everything they did.
I think that most people really believe that the changes that have been made are good and were necessary. But that doesn't change the fact that they feel less secure, and the whole morale business is not what it could be.
Business units and staff who didn't make the grade were ruthlessly pared down. Over 100,000 workers were fired within the first 5 years of Welch's reign.
We now have got to do things simpler, faster, and smarter.
Welch wanted to keep only the best workers and develop their talents.
Welch always felt, I think, that there was a lot of knowledge throughout the organization, that it just didn't reside in the office of the CEO. And so part of his commitment was to free up the knowledge, the talent in the organization, no matter where one was in the hierarchy.
From jet engines to wind turbines, computers to medical devices. Throughout the 1980s, GE was a conglomerate with a reach into every aspect of everyday life. But for Welch, that wasn't enough.
One of the things that Welch was insistent on when he made these changes in the 80s and 90s was that the organization reposition itself to be relevant in the future. And the relevant industries were finance, aerospace, and, jet engines and things like that, not refrigerators.
Is restructuring over?
No, change is not over. We'll never stop changing.
When Welch left GE in 2001, it was the most admired company in America. By then, it had become clear that GE appliances, once the heart of the company, no longer fit.
We never fit into the company that well for a lot of years. I think we felt that the parent wasn't that interested in being truly in the appliance market. So there was always rumors for years about something might happen to the appliance division.
Qingdao, East China. Today, the affluent port city is home to China's very own General Electric, household appliance giant Haier. Haier now rakes in $37 billion in sales each year. But 30 years ago, the outlook was grim for what was then known as the Qingdao refrigerator factory. In the early 1980s, China was just starting to experiment with capitalism. While General Electric was a corporate giant with $25 billion in annual sales. Qingdao Refrigerator Company was then a collective enterprise on the brink of collapse. The company had gone through 3 general managers that year. A 35-year-old city manager called Zhang Ruimin became the 4th.
很多人对这个厂大家都觉得它是不会有希望的，要钱没有钱，要这产品没有产品。
Since a revolving door of general managers had failed to stop the rot, no one expected Zhang to be any different. But he did something revolutionary. He declared that a worker's pay would be linked to his performance.
打破铁饭碗是很重要的一步，就是如果你干得不好，你可能要被迫从企业里走人。那在之前这都是不可想象的，因为你在一个这种就是过去的那种企业体制下，那他进了工厂，他就一辈子你就得养着他，他哪怕是不管他干什么，你都得养着他。
But Chinese work culture proved hard to shake. 1 year after taking over, Zhang discovered in a random check that a fifth of the fridges in a warehouse were faulty. At that time, a fridge cost almost 2 years of a worker's pay. But Zhang ordered that all 76 fridges be destroyed by the workers responsible. The dramatic gesture made national headlines.
My family and I were living in Dalian, and Dalian was, quite a distance away from Qingdao. But in '84, when the refrigerators were smashed, it was all over the news. I remember vividly the people in Dalian buzzing about this unthinkable act. Unthinkable because nobody that we knew in those days had a refrigerator in their home. We saw refrigerators in retail outlets, saw them on television, but nobody had one of them in their home. And so if you could get a refrigerator and bring it into your house, it didn't matter whether it worked or not. There was this wonderful, ingenious repair business where people could fix anything, and because Chinese quality was so bad. And so what I saw was people trying to buy refrigerators in the streets of Shanghai, despite the fact that they probably didn't work, but because that was the only way they would ever get one. And so destroying a refrigerator, even though it didn't work, made no sense to people. It became a signature event, in, not only in Haier's history, but in the minds of everybody in China who recognized that this was an organization that was doing the unthinkable, which was promising not to sell products that didn't work.
这76台不合格的冰箱要砸掉，其实呢就是要转变人的观念的一个切入点，否则的话呢就很难让一个震撼的事件叫大家感到全面质量管理其实是人的管理，或者换句话说，高质量产品是高素质的人生产出来的。
Qingdao Refrigerator Factory turned the tables on quality. And within 3 short years, the company's fridges were declared the best in China. It was an accolade they would win again and again. The government soon rewarded the company for its success and handed it 18 other appliance factories to manage. In 1992, the company renamed itself RenDanHeYi.
我想呢，这个大楼的落成和总部的动迁，意味着是海尔发展的一个重要的标志，是我们向更高目标冲击的一个新的起点。这个发展目标。
Where Zhang succeeded while other managers had failed was in motivating his workers. Zhang was determined to reward his workers according to their contributions because he'd been a factory worker too, one who rose from worker to supervisor over 10 long years.
所以在这个过程当中呢，我会发现很多工人非常普通的工人，其实他们非常有才华，但是他们的智慧呢没法得到肯定，因为他如果有一个好的建议提出来，没人说哎，这我会采纳你的建议，那么都是按照上级的指示一级的下来做。那么有的时候上级的指示反而呢，在某种意义上说是并不是很高明的，工人呢反而非常切合实际。所以在我做了管理者之后呢，我就想呢，我就要建立一种机制，让工人把他的才智充分的都发挥出来。
现在一开始起了，你看，比起刚才那个最高对，上上有。
Zhang began to study management theories while he was still a factory worker. And one of his heroes was none other than GE's Jack Welch, and his focus on rewarding talent and ideas.
GE 几乎当时是被称为全球的第一公司，所以我也专门到这个 GE 的那个培训中心克劳顿，专门去参观、学习、了解。那时候我们基本上把它作为我们一个标杆和样板，因为很难想象那么一个全球化的大企业，把工人的那个积极性都调动起来了，而且他操作的非常的好。那时候几乎GE在我们心目当中是一个神话吧。 他把100万美金以下的这个额度的创新放给了员工。
One of the things you got to do is work with your people. Develop them, bring them along, encourage them, nurture them. If you're a manager, your job is to flower the seeds.
Jack Welch himself became an admirer of Haier. In 1992, when GE was looking for a contract manufacturer in China, they tried to buy Haier. But Haier said no.
我们一开始也是同意的，但是后来在谈的过程当中呢，感到他基本上把我们作为一个加工基地，而不是要把我们发展的更大，所以当时就拒绝了。
GE did not take the rejection well.
最后我们通知他说我们不想和你合作了，他是非常生气。最后他提出了2点，第一个呢说，你不要看你们现在做得很好，你们将来呢会遇到非常大的困难，非常大的困难就在于你们现在团结一致，非常有干劲儿，非常有激情，但是随着你们的发展，工资上涨到一定程度之后，这个人就不再有这些激情了。那么第二个呢，他就说，我们中国市场是一定要进来的，但进来之后，我们第一个目标就要消灭你们。那当时我就跟他说，我说那我也告诉你一句话，就是美国连任4届总统的富兰克林·罗斯福，那么他有一句很著名的话，就是我们唯一恐惧的就是恐惧本身。那么也就是说，如果我们能战胜自己，我们不会在意外来的竞争者的这个竞争力的问题。
Haier brushed off GE's fighting words and grew quickly through the 1990s and early 2000s, banking on its reputation for quality and ability to scale.
Manufacturing in China was a pretty simple game. You won by getting big because most Chinese consumers at that point didn't have a lot of money. They were just buying basics of life. And that was fine because the market was growing so fast that there was room for everybody to win.
But in the late 2000s, being big stopped being enough.
The growth starts to slow. This fight becomes a lot more difficult. And so the fight began to change from who's biggest to who's smartest. It's harder in washing machines. It's easier to be smarter than the other person in smartphones because there's a lot to be smarter about. It's hard to have a cutting-edge toaster. I mean, at the end of the day, a toaster's a toaster.
Even before this slowdown in demand from Chinese consumers, Zhang noticed Haier developing the sluggishness of big businesses. That apathy that Jack Welch had predicted.
那随着这个企业发展越来越大，那么也就是国际上所说的大企业病，官僚主义就厉害了，离着市场就越来越远了，和用户之间的沟通也越来越少，所以就更需要让每一个人、每一个部门都和市场连接起来。
By now, Zhang had become a much-admired global business thinker. But in 2005, he would make his boldest move yet. In a bid to connect every worker to the customer and to regain the entrepreneurial zest of small companies, Zhang divided his 60,000 global employees into more than 1,000 micro-enterprises. He termed this model RenDanHeYi. Each unit became a small company responsible for its own decisions and financial survival. But during this overhaul, they laid off 10,000 experienced employees.
这个呢，其实真的是非常难做的一个决策，因为呢，这1万多名的中层管理者呢，有很多都是一开始创业时候来做的，他们其实呢是一个非常非常好的员工或者管理者，但是呢，如果叫他做创业者，他可能非常困难，所以当时就给他们提出来，要么你就来创业，要么你就要离开。在这个问题呢，我们就是下定决心，一定是要推进这种商业模式，不管是谁，都必须是变成创业者。
In this entrepreneurial spirit, workers can vote to kick out team members who do not perform. If a unit's products are not well received by its customers, feedback is quick and profit and loss numbers are transparent, even on the factory floor.
从大屏幕可以看到它所生产的产品所对应的用户信息。从大屏幕也可以看到这台单元台操作员工在班组内的竞比情况。从那个大屏幕也可以看到当天他干了多少台，挣了多少钱；当月他干了多少台，挣了多少钱，也就实现了人单合一用户复兴在我们工厂终端的真正落地。
Hiya's reinvention as a platform for innovation now draws startups from outside the company. Inside Hiya itself, RenDanHeYi has created unexpected entrepreneurs, even among those who've spent decades in the company.
作为一个大学生来说，就是也没有经验，也没有资金，所以呢，其实只是想找一份工作，安安稳稳的，能够养家糊口嘛。
Marketing executive Sun and her team came up with the idea to help retail stores order Hiya products with an e-concierge system. Hiya provided seed funding for the venture, but Sun and 6 others also forked out over $400,000 to keep the startup afloat.
因为那会儿是生存逼的，我们当时就是考虑的是这个公司怎么活下去。我们都每分钱的投入都要是算投入产出的，所以呢，也是因为这个自己投入，才会对于市场的这个把握，才会对于这个时间的紧迫性都非常非常的强。所以我们团队会经常的熬通宵的加班去把这个产品进行迭代的升级，为我们的用户。
Hiya became the world's top home appliance brand in 2009, a position it's held since then. But slower growth in the huge China market meant Hiya had to ramp up its international expansion.
Ribbon cutting ceremony of the Hiya Building.
Hiya had a global strategy before most other Chinese companies. In the late 1990s, Hiya took on the developed markets of Europe and America. But it had to deal with the perception that the Made in China tag meant poor quality.
The stereotypes, are hard to disabuse. So I think Hiya has been frustrated by their inability to make more of a statement in the North American and European markets.
Hiya finally decided to buy its way into developed markets like Japan and New Zealand. In 2011, it snapped up Sanyo and shortly after, Fisher and Paykel. But in the market it valued most, Hiya made little headway.
Hiya is a huge company, massive company, global champion #1. They've entered the US in 1999, but 16 years later, 17 years later, they've got 2% of the market. What happened?
In the battle for the $40 billion American household appliance market, GE Appliances had a 14% market share, while Hiya had just 1%. But parent company General Electric didn't want to stay in the appliance game.
Certain businesses, you get stronger and stronger the more successful you are. Nobody can compete with you. That's WeChat, that's Facebook. Other businesses, most businesses, you're just in a fight every day forever. It's an operational fight. Get better distribution, do better marketing, come up with new products, keep reinvesting, and you fight, and the fight never ends. That's a pretty tough business to be in. That's kind of appliances.
Even with leading-edge technology and resources, Hiya could not overcome an important yet elusive barrier in the American market.
It looks like, the great firewall against Chinese manufacturing is brand equity. Most people in the US, they don't buy washing machines in stores. They get them with their house. Washing machines are sold to builders. real estate developers, and then some trade stores like IKEA and stuff. But that system, the distribution, the marketing, and the brand was a pretty defendable position for companies like Maytag and Whirlpool and GE.
In 2014, GE struck a deal to sell its struggling appliance business to Sweden's Electrolux. But together, GE and Electrolux had almost half of the appliance market in America. And objection from antitrust regulators finally scuppered the deal. In 2016, GE put its appliance unit on the market again. This time, Haier was invited to make a bid. But how the tables had turned. Haier was just a small business when GE tried to buy them in the early 1990s.
我们在2016年，那我们的规模已经是它的5倍了，所以在这个过程当中，等于是它是很大了，但是它的发展呢还是很慢。那我们是发展的比较快。
At Haier headquarters, some questioned if GE Appliances was even a good buy.
对，这是一个很重要的问题。其实我们内部呢也有人提出这个问题。那我们花了这么多钱，如果把这些钱用到我们自己开到美国市场，我们也可以做起来，何必要做他们呢？其实我认为呢，因为我们的目标很清楚，我们就是要创一个名牌，创一个海尔在美国的品牌，本土化的品牌。 在美国人心目当中，至少很多人心目当中，他是相信记忆的，相信记忆这个品牌，因为这个品牌代表了很多内涵。那么，如果我们想创造这种内涵，其实不是钱的问题，可能是需要很长的时间。这对我们来讲，可能是就很难承受。
The opening days of the bid were tense. Reports suggest there were up to 7 bidders.
我不知道他们到底是怎么想的。如果就是只是以报价为唯一标准，那我们就没有希望。
Haier felt that there was no other GE appliances that was going to come out of the market at any point in the foreseeable future. So it wasn't do or die, but it was now or never. I do think that it would have been really disadvantageous for Haier if one of its domestic rivals had wound up buying General Electric appliances.
What Haier knew for a fact was that their bid was not the highest. Zhang rushed to America to talk to GE's then CEO, Jeff Immelt.
交谈的时候呢，主要是更多的是交流的是我们自己的管理理念和我们这个人单合一怎么解决大企业病，使这个企业更加充满活力。其实伊梅尔特对这个非常感兴趣，把人单合一更多的用到 GE 身上。 可能会给GE带来更多的发展机遇，更多的这个机会，所以他对这一点很认可。其实他听了之后呢，基本上就更加倾向于，其实不是价格问题，而是整个的这个兼并的方案，他认为海尔的会更好。
On the 15th of January, GE announced it had accepted Haier's bid. The final price? $5.6 billion US.
我觉得他们感到我们有2点比较好。第一个就是说，我们会把GE这个品牌做得更好。第二个呢，我们不会像很多企业收购了之后，先来裁员、兼并这个裁减人员。
Amid the celebrations, Zhang struck a cautionary note.
他们很高兴，大家都很高兴，觉得费了这么多劲儿，现在做成了。当时呢，我只给他们说了一句话，就是行百里者半九十。
For Haier, the next move was key, managing the acquisition. Almost immediately, GE Appliances had to solve a labor dispute with 4,000 union workers at its Appliance Park headquarters.
For some, there was a fear of the unknown, you know, trying to understand what does it mean? What does it mean to be acquired by a Chinese company? Why did they really want to, you know, acquire GE Appliances? What do they have to offer us as we come together?
Zhang's RenDanHeYi model worked at Haier. Become an entrepreneur or leave. As part of the acquisition deal, GE Appliances kept its autonomy, so Haier could not simply enforce its will.
我们一开始也非常担心美国公司、美国人会不会接受呢？包括他们的员工也觉得我们原来那样做就很好，现在为什么要这样做呢？
In 2016, Haier paid $5.6 billion for General Electric's famous century-old appliance business. But the GE appliances that Haier bought was no longer the market leader it was in the 1980s. In America, GE appliances had fallen behind Korea's Samsung and LG. Haier needed GE appliances to change, and fast.
There's a legacy mindset around what I'm going to call variance reduction. It's about getting the surprises out, making sure everything's perfect, operational excellence, getting the cost down. But Haier was looking for surprises. Surprises in product, surprises in organization, surprises in business model, and they weren't coming. So I think that there was some impatience as to when is that going to happen.
Kevin Nolan was GE Appliances Chief Technology Officer in 2016. He spent a year in Qingdao learning about the company's technology roadmap. Soon after, Nolan was promoted to Chief Executive.
When Haier finally came in and acquired us, it was a relief. It was a relief because we're acquired by someone that really wants us, that's in the sweet spot of where they want to grow. And I think all the employees, although there was always the fear of the unknown, we kind of knew we needed to do something different.
In Qingdao, Nolan was able to see how the RenDanHeYi model worked in practice.
It took me a while to start really understanding. You hear things, RenDanHeYi, you hear different management, but what does that really mean? It might sound simple on the surface, but there was a lot of depth in it.
With GE Appliances facing stiff competition in its American home market, it couldn't afford to keep doing the same thing. In his first year as CEO, Nolan started to break the company into micro-enterprises. And one of these first units was its laundry business.
What's great about this model is the speed. There's not 4 layers of approval that we have to go to. You're being responsive to the market, you're being responsive to owners in the marketplace, and it lets you grow.
This growth has been dramatic. In 2017, the laundry micro-enterprise was the company's best performing unit, with profit of over $12 million. Just a year before that, the unit had losses of $3 million.
我始终觉得呢，他们会接受RenDanHeYi，因为RenDanHeYi的本质呢，就是尊重人，把人的价值放在第一位，让人的价值、潜在价值充分发挥出来。
Back at Haier's HQ, there was another area of concern. They feared GE Appliances would lag in a key pillar of Haier's strategy, the Internet of Things.
这是一个很重要的问题，也是我们经常思考的问题。确实呢，我们呢可能10几年了在这方面探索。那么 GE 呢，它刚刚开始。
The Internet of Things, or IoT, refers to adding internet connectivity and sensors to traditionally dumb everyday objects. These devices can then communicate over the internet and be remotely controlled. In the world of household appliances, IoT is the next big thing.
你好，小新。
你好，看起来你今天心情不错。
这款是我们这个海尔的新厨冰箱，可以实现语音对话。
人类的世界太复杂，我还没有听懂，需要慢慢学习。
好，买的这个黄豆放入冰箱之后，你买了放完之后吧，你可能忘吃了，它会提示你。 过期了，它就会提示你过期了，不能吃了。
Zhang's vision for the Internet of Things is not just about smart products connected in a smart home.
你看，你只是把食材放进去就行了。放进去之后吧，你看有开始制作， 开始制作密纸样牌，我们确认一下，你看，它自动打开烤箱，开始工作了。
美国的经济学家所说的就是将来应该是一个免费的时代。那到那个时候呢，可能产品不值钱了，值钱的什么就是服务。是每一个行业呢，大概它都会发展出一个物联网。你比方说我们的冰箱，它不但是给你储藏食品，它是给你提供食品解决方案的，所以这个就是一个食联网。那么其他的等等呢，其实不再是给你提供一个产品了，而是从产品作为一个载体，给你通过这个产品提供了一个服务方案。
In the race to make such connected devices for the home, GE Appliances has to play catch-up to Haier. But outside the Chinese market, both Haier and GE Appliances have to square up against the tech juggernauts of Apple, Google, and Amazon. Now at least both companies are on the same side.
It is not just the core products. They really look further down the line as to where they can provide solutions for their consumers. So really trying to get, in their words, as close to the consumer, zero distance to the consumer. So we've looked at that and said that's a great strategy.
Buying in that strategy is starting to pay off. In 2018, its new kitchen hub was named the most innovative appliance at the annual CES Consumer Showcase.
Really, it allows us to create things like virtual cooking classes. It has cameras on it that can create interactions with families that haven't existed before. So if you wanted to reach out to mom and have her help you with that recipe, you can do it right from the kitchen hub. So I can come into my contacts, I can select somebody, and I can use the cameras that I have. So I can come into here and video chat with my mom that might live 1,000 miles away. You know, we are a very dispersed society nowadays. We don't live next door to each other like we used to years ago. So this machine really allows us to kind of bring that family back to what it used to be.
The idea for Kitchen Hub came from an innovation lab backed by GE Appliances called First Build.
There were 4 college students from the University of Louisville that didn't want to take out their iPhones or their mom's recipe books around their cooking because they were kind of messy. So they invented a system of which they put a projector into a vent hood that actually projected on the back wall behind the cooking device, the oven that they were working on.
At First Build, an open community of industrial designers, scientists, engineers, students, and makers co-develop ideas with the First Build team. This was a special project that Kevin Nolan nurtured in 2014.
When I developed First Build a few years back, we always thought it had to be somewhat separate, and we need to keep it separate so that the parent didn't disrupt what we were doing down there, because it was fundamentally different than what we were doing here at Appliance Park. We were worried about a parent coming in and maybe saying, hey, you shouldn't be so open.
Anyone, including GE's competitors, can walk in with an idea. Together, they develop prototypes, make, and sell up to 1,000 units of any promising new product.
Now, certainly I get the question of, hey, won't your competitors know what you're working on? And the answer is sure. So that's just another fire under us to say, we're going to be nimble, we're going to be quick.
You need feedback, and you can't get feedback from colleagues, you can't get feedback from paid research. You need to get feedback from people that are honest and will tell you what they think. That's the community of people that either buy your products or that want to develop products with you.
Products that do well may be taken on by the main GE Appliances line, with the inventors getting royalties. A promising crowdsourcing model of innovation that GE Appliances will continue to bet on.
In corporate America, they don't understand how being open, I think, is fundamentally a lot better if you want to be innovative. But Haier gets it, and they're a company that probably gets it more than any other company I've met so far.
In 2018, GE Appliances reported its best results in the past decade, with profit growth of some 20%. But now Haier needs GE Appliances to step up and become a truly global brand.
其实 GE 原来呢，主要是在美国，在外边的发展它并不是很大，所以我们现在要变成一个全球化的品牌的话呢，就现在它需要改变很多，就是说它要和用户之间的联系更加紧密，它要使产品的档次更加高。那么第二个呢，就是不能局限在美国，要局限到全球各地去。所以当然第一点呢，先到中国。
采用直驱电机，才如此平稳安静。
Haier might dominate the mid to high-end segments of the Chinese appliance market, but foreign brands have mostly failed in the Chinese market. And it's not yet clear that GE Appliances will do any better.
基本上还是关门叫车的生意，有好多品牌一关门就面包车一样，噼里啪啦的关上了，是这样。所以说差距还是非常大的这个东西。
Haier recently opened this GE Appliances boutique in Qingdao. And one of the store's strategies is to hold networking activities with its customers.
我退休了没事儿吧，就在家里就想琢磨做点什么，因为不会吧。完后来朋友介绍认识袁总，完了我们就过来了。过来看了以后，哎，不错，挺好的。完了自己亲手调制，自己烹调，完了烘焙嘛，感觉特别好。
Most of the store's customers are like Wang, who ended up spending $15,000 US buying the whole set of 10 GE appliances for her home. A promising start for GE Appliances in China. Haier may now be the top home appliance brand in the world, but it has not forgotten the humble fridge, the appliance which kicked off its journey. The same appliance that General Electric made affordable in the 1920s. Today, Haier and GE Appliances want to take the fridge into the next century.
如果问你对冰箱的感觉是什么，你肯定想到的就是这个上边是冷藏，下边是冷冻，没有人去怀疑过它。不管以前日本的企业，甚至是欧美的企业，但这几年实际上发生了巨大的变化。枸杞是一种那个补品，有一个用户就非常普通的一个用户，他就说，哎，虽然冰箱是冷藏的，但是不适合这样的东西放在这。
Haier's research team discovered that 60% of typical food items are dry and not suitable for regular refrigeration. First, they developed a fridge with moisture settings. Then, further feedback quickly led to a radical new product.
这款冰箱最大的特点就是这个控氧保鲜技术。大家都知道，这个食物的腐败是因为氧气氧化了以后，然后食物腐败。那么，在这个保鲜盒里呢，通过那个技术把氧气抽掉一部分，氧气少了以后，这食物就是变得保质期会变得非常长。像三文鱼的话，在正常冰箱的话，可能1-2天就坏了，就不能吃了，就不能生吃了。在这个保鲜盒里边的话，可以达到买回来7天以后正常可以生吃。然后蔬菜的话，可以做到40多天，照常非常的新鲜。
就冰箱100年来基本上就是那个样子的。那我的梦想很简单，我就是一定要改变冰箱现在这个样子。
The story of GE Appliances and Haier has been one of constant reinvention. From the humblest appliance to work culture itself.
The legacy I want to have is just unleashing the capability that I think we've always had here, but we've never really had that hunger to win because we've got a parent now that's really encouraging that and wants us to be the best that we can be.
But with Maverick leader Zhang Ruimin turning 70 and perhaps close to retirement, the two companies may face their greatest challenge yet.
对于我来讲，最大的感触就是说，不管你公司的大小，你需要天天挑战自我，是天天战胜自我，天天都要有变化，否则的话，你一定会落后于时代。